So the time has come. I couldn't put it off any longer, and it's time to go to the races. After, well, it's probably only about a year off of actually my last race, but it seems like a very, very big year. One of the downsides of having a bike company is, in fact, it was told to me by one of the guys from Marin. They said one of the biggest things about having a bike company is that you don't get to ride very much, but the quality of the riding that you do get, and especially being able to ride for work as well, sometimes is very good. But I would say you certainly don't get out as much a lot of the time as I did before I did it, because most of my spare time is kind of tied up with doing bike stuff, but not on bikes. However, over summer that's going to change, and that was just the last year of it. But the hard part is kind of taking that time off and then getting back into it. So I'm going to talk to you about my experience of going back to racing, and let's say that this is kind of the first time I've done it in a long time, and that I want to kind of encourage people that aren't racing at the moment to give it a go. And so heads up. I had my new prototype Death Wish finished on Friday night, and never ridden it before. I've never even seen it all together. So at least you have that over me. You should know your bike and setup. And a little tangent and segue sort of like blown me away to have 1 year ago this weekend. I think we were at a different Pedal Hounds event, just hanging out and, you know, speaking to people, meeting the organiser Paul, and it would be one of the first times we met one of our first customers, Andy. So a year ago then to a year ago now, standing there with my own custom geometry bike is kind of like humbling, and really reinforces why you do it. And also the guys at D&D, we had like a rack of production Privé and sick bikes. We had quite, a number of them at the event, 4 or 5 in total. So seeing those all racked up together in one place was quite a good moment. And someone came second on on one of our frames as well, and Bradley only didn't come first because he had a bit of a crash. So and he was racing hardtail in a full suspension category. So that's as a bit of a sideline, that was quite a proud moment. So I was really, really blown away with that. And also kind of things I'd forgotten as well, like how important it is to set your bike up from the track. And Dave from D&D set it up. I didn't walk the course or anything, so because me and Ethan arrived fashionably late by accident again, because we went to the venue before. So we went to the wrong place. Pretty typical of us. So let's talk about my first race. I had Ethan and Alex there racing, and I knew a lot of people there, Dave and Dan from D&D, and the guys from Fat Creations, know them okay, and a few of the other riders, Ben Deakin and stuff, know a bit, so it's quite a nice thing. But most of the time I kind of separated off and did my own thing. A lot of fun is levied at enduro racing, because it's seen as kind of a bit of a kinky version of mountain biking. But I'll be honest. I went to my first enduro event kind of out of curiosity to see what it was like, and it's quite an appealing entrance to the sport. So here's my reasons why I think that. One, in cross-country races, which used to be predominantly what you got in the south of England while I was growing up and riding, they tended to be very, very competitive, because people are trying really, really hard. But also they're very, very athletic. So you'll get some riders that are great at hill climbs, and some riders that are great at descents, and some all-rounders. But on the whole, everyone is whippet thin. They're 8 stone, 6 foot tall, on tricked out, really expensive bikes that weigh less than my hair does, you know, and that's kind of intimidating in that respect. And especially I found personally, and people are going to disagree with me and say, no, I've never found that. But I always found when I raced at cross country, I had a continuing stream of people like, on your left, out your way, you know, like people aggressively like wanting to get past because they want to win, you know, it's very, very hyper aggressive. I got overtaken yesterday once by a guy on an e-bike. It sounded like a remote control car being driven by a wasp, several wasps that were angry at me. So it was like, you know, behind me. I was like, what? And that was you know, the only time I got past, because in enduro racing there's a gap between each rider, and it's kind of set either by the marshal, or you know, you can almost self-set it. You watch your mate go off in front of you and think, yeah, he's rapid, I can go straight in after him because he's going to go off. Or you can sort of say to them, you know, person behind, I've got Brendan Fairclough behind me, which I did, and say, maybe you want to let him in front or give me a bit more time, like 4 or 5 days. So that's one aspect of it as well, is you get to sort of be isolated. And you can say, well, downhill racing is like that, and that's kind of true. But I think that downhill is a very dangerous, very aggressive, and very physical sport. So we're not talking in terms of aerobic athleticism. I think you also need strength as well. You need to get really keyed up, and you need to be reckless. So in those races, I've always found that it takes pressure on, like, it makes pressure on top of you, and you'll find that the best riders in the world, they're the ones that can cope with the pressure, and they're not just a consistent rider, but they can handle the stress and the strain of downhill, which is repeatedly doing a short but very vicious track that requires concentration, focus, and strength, and good mental acuity, hand and eye coordination, so you can remember where you're going and you can react in a certain way like a robot. All in all, it doesn't make a particularly fun race environment for a beginner, novice, or someone coming back to the sport. In fact, I almost entered a downhill race, and then I watched the course. And when I looked at it, it was like the opening thing. It came down like from the start area, and the first thing was a mandatory set of like really big doubles. And I thought, you know what's going to happen in the race? It'll be like the one time I just case it, and I was like, I don't really want that barrier to entry on my race. So where does enduro come into that? In that the courses are almost a cross between a cross country course and a downhill course, in that there will be features in there that are testing, and if you have the ability to overcome them, let's say drops or doubles, they will offer a faster line. Enduro also kind of, it rewards you with thinking about your line choices. There's loads of times where they con you, because if it's in the tapes, then it's a line. And I remember, I know Scott at Southern Enduro is kind of plays mind games, this kind of thing, where the course will go, you can see where everyone's ridden, you can see this line that goes round that way, yeah, and the tape will go like that and go out that way and out that way. And when, you know, keep your mouth shut, but when you walk in the track, you're like, well, hang on, if I just drop off that edge there, I cut off 25 meters of track. And it's like, if it's in the race, it's in the race. And if they've taped it that way, they've done it deliberately. So you'll see loads of people riding, just your mind is your head down, your eyes down, you're looking at the course, but you can be rewarded for different line choices. So that's fun. There's an element of skill and planning, and, you know, almost like chess moves to do that. I quite like that about it. I mean, and this is probably starting to sound, if you've not done one of the race, it's probably starting to sound quite far away from what you imagined it being. The other thing is, despite all of the jokey things, like people with enduro bananas taped to their head, and people being obsessed with like inner tube valves, how old am I? Tubeless valves, and the logos on their tyres lining up, and how many water bottles you can fit on your bike, and hating on e-bikes, and having a peak in a half shell with a pair of goggles, and all of the latest Santa Cruz gears and gadgets. When you come down to it, the nature of enduro racing is actually really fun. So if you know, I'm going to be teaching a lot of you to suck eggs when I explain it, but if it tells one person that has never actually seen it, and it, you know, gives them an interesting insight, then it's worth it. So just hold on for 20 seconds if you know what you're talking about. Basically, you do it in stages. So you can think of an enduro race as doing 3 or 4 or more, yesterday was 9, downhill races in one day. They don't time the uphills. They don't time the transition or transfer stages. None of that is timed. However, the whole day, you know, you can't spend all day doing it. You have to do a certain amount of things. And yesterday's cut-off was 3 o'clock. And at 3 o'clock, they start taking the course down. So you've got to have done them all by then. But that's a lot of time to do them. That leads to a relaxed pace. Obviously, there's some guys that come out of, you know, the start arena. And you know, the start line, that's not the start line. That's the start of the transfer stage to the first stage. So you go out of the start line, and it might even be a 5 to 10 minute gentle ride to the first stage. You enter the queue for the first stage, and there may be, you know, a couple of people in front of you, maybe 10, 30 people in front of you, and you go every 30 seconds. They let you. You cross the line, your timing chip beeps on your wrist, and off you go. You're timed between those sections. A majority of it, up to 100% of it, is downhill. Some of them have, you know, 20% of mild climbs in between that you can carry speed, but in a majority of it is just straightforward riding. When you get to the end section, your wrist beeps and you're off the clock again. And you'll find that people are either standing at the bottom waiting for you, clapping, cheering, other riders. Some people are just waiting for someone to hang out with on the next transfer, because then you've got a hill climb, inevitably, to get to the next start point. And it could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes, it could be half an hour, you know, away. EWS, they're like miles. Like they do hundreds of miles of, you know, riding. So in those times, you'll see like half to 3/4 of the people will just be pushing, and they're talking to people. And you've got pro riders like Ollie Wilkins, Brendan Fairclough, like Bendy. I don't know, he's pro, he's just good looking, you know, but they're in with everyone else. Like Brendan was walking his dog in between stages and stuff. You know, that's a relaxed attitude. That is the kind of environment you get into. It's almost it's almost like a festival environment, you know. It's quite nice. In between it, you know, we found that yesterday, because there was like basically 3 stages 3 times, so it's like 9 stages to do. In between it, people were getting burgers and like chips and a cup of coffee, and they sit down and going round, checking their times, going in for repairs and stuff like that. 'Cause it's a relaxed event. It's fine. It's fun. So that's one of the reasons I actually, despite all of its comedic values, I think enduro will most likely be the future of the sport in general. Why sticking enduro names on every single trail bike? The thing is, enduro is mountain biking with your mates of a clock. There's nothing closer to it in terms of riding. Cross country is not like, well, it's not like riding with my mates. Downhill, it's not like riding with my mates. Enduro is very like riding with my mates. Bashing out the descent sections as fast as possible, and then barely, you know, having the energy and skill to do the climb. So I think that's quite relevant. So how did my first race go? Well, the first thing is that I like my new bike. That's good. It's a XXL wheelbase, but then with a small seat tube and standover. With this frame, I tried to really push the limits of what I could do on it. And I think I probably found them. It's a little bit too low, and it's probably a little bit too long. It doesnn't need to become a dick measuring contest now. But I kind of thought if I was making it for myself, then I could do what I wanted, so I did. The one thing that feels really good is you do sit very centrally. It feels like you're very in it, not on it. It's kind of like a motocross bike. It climbs surprisingly well. I would want to do some more work on setting up the shock. I was getting an atrocious amount of bob in the first. It's really weird. Like in the first, like 15% of travel, like it was just like this. It was really weird, and I don't know quite what was causing it. I know the pivots like intersects the chain line, but something that didn't come up on the sim is coming up, or it was just that I was really looking at it because I was, and obviously you can firm up the lockout on it to climb mode, and it was like brilliant. But it's just a little weird thing, so I might have to move the pivot placement slightly on my one, because the chain stays is like really, really long, and then the shock is at a different angle than the production version, which should have meant that it was going to bottom straight out, but I had a feeling that with an air shock it was going to ramp up just enough to do it with a big can, and it didn't. I didn't bottom out once, but I was running it quite hard. So that was interesting, just to play around with a prototype version that was a little bit extreme and pushed outside of the boundaries of what we thought was acceptable, just 10% over, so it was good. Did I get nervous? Yep. Rolling up to the start line, butterflies in my stomach, seeing people suffer with the first corner. I mean, it was mean-spirited. There was like basically 5 metres to the first corner. It was round an off-camber corner, over roots and round a tree, like a hairpin. No berms, no nothing. So it was wet and slippery. Everyone was like flopping around, and it was quite funny. There was a lot of heckling and stuff. But once I got away, I was like, oh yeah, this is it. It's nothing like feeling like you always push yourself when you're riding, but you never really find your limits till you're racing. You never find where you truly belong till you're racing. You never know how good a rider you are till you're actually racing. And it was beautiful. It's really, really good. I fell back in love with it. Now, after that bit, I did I did stage 1, 2, 3, and then I did 3, 2, and then 3, and then I quit it for the day. I'll tell you why. One, I kind of wanted to remain intact for riding for the rest of the summer, and the course was getting very, very wet and very muddy. 2, I'm not competing in the rest of the series, so I don't really need to carry the points. I'm not going to win anything. And also I was racing in the field with lots and lots of pros and loads of my mates who were really rapid, so there was no chance of me getting on the podium anyway. And it was a case of I sort of want to live for another day. So no one took the mick, no one even cared. They're like that. One of the things is you get all this keyed up about winning a race and podiuming, but remember it's a local race. It's hardly going to make it into the headline news, and the next race no one will remember who won anyway. So it's good enough reason that you get out there and do it, and give it a try as well. Even find out when we're doing one and come along at the same time, and at any point you're like, dude, what's happening? I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. I just don't know. They're talking about I don't know, this man's got an enduro banana. Am I supposed to have one? Is it boost or non-boost? Is that a press fit flapjack? Don't worry about it. Do I have to have 6 water bottles on my bike? Why has that guy got a bum bag? Don't worry about all of those bits. It's fun. We had a guy that was there taking photos. Lives locally, but he doesn't know much about the sport. And he said it reminds me of rally car driving this, and it's really similar to that. So what are your top tips? Preparing for your first race. 1, make sure that you get out on your bike and you're comfortable with it and know about the setup. 2, definitely have a night of maintenance way before you're supposed to race. I would recommend leaving your bike alone for a little bit, getting down the gym, getting on the turbo trainer, and then getting out for a spin, light one the day before. Pack everything early in the morning, the day before you're going to go. So you've got all day to double check it. I found out that Tess always has an inventory list she takes and she checks it off. It sounds like a pain, but we had a guy that was racing yesterday, and he had forgotten the front axle for his bike because he's required to take it out to put his bike in the car, put it down on the side, didn't check it, didn't get to race. So silly things like that. Make sure your helmet and all of your gear, your gloves and everything is clean, well fitting, and not damaged. You don't really want to be the guy that's carted off in the ambulance because your pads didn't work. If you're planning on getting new tyres at any point and you know the ones you like, get them before the race. New tyres really help. Choose your tyres for the weather and have a spare set if you can. In fact, like, tyres are really, really expensive. Don't have any shame at all in going out and buying a second-hand pair of like spike tyres and cutting some of the knob down and customising them for yourself to race. Like, I saw loads of people with those yesterday. As soon as the rain came out, spike on the front and they were cutting up little bits of it. You can find out how to do it online. Second-hand ones are fine. Loads of pros actually only use their tyres once or twice and they sell heaps of them online at the end of the year, especially Pinkbike, eBay, you'll find them. Make sure you've got adequate water. You will need at least 1 litre of water for every hour you're out doing stuff. That might be all right to carry it as a water bottle on your frame. If it's a hot day, you're going to need water before and after, and definitely way more than you think. Also, don't assume that there'll be good catering that will suit your dietary needs at a race. A lot of the time, it's a weekend, it's remote. They're going to convince a burger van at best to come, unless you're Scott from Southern Enduro, who for some reason has this. He'll have like someone that makes hot chocolate, someone that makes burritos, tacos, Mexican food, burger van. Like, Scott always lays it right on. Don't know how he convinced him that to go out in the middle of nowhere, but he does. But even if there is going to be hot food and you've got money, just make sure that you've got some backup, because yesterday we didn't have nearly enough water. I didn't really think about it. Normally I'm quite well prepared. Assume that you're going to get a puncture. Assume that you're going to snap your chain every single time. Don't be afraid to ask the guys that have bike shops there to help set up your bike if you have a little bit of a run in practice. Also, you may not get a practice run. Some of the courses allow you to walk the track. Some of you get a bit of a practice morning where you can go out and you can spin around the course and find the lines. But it's not unusual to not get them at all. So don't count on that. Bring some mates. But I always feel sorry for anyone that brings spectators along with them who aren't interested in bikes. because of the way the stages are, you'll be like, and that's it. Although if you've got a particularly enthusiastic mum and dad, they might like it. Aside from that, don't stress about it too much. You're not in the World Cup. You're just there to challenge yourself. And what you really should be doing is using it as a way to learn to set up your bike best and to push yourself to limits you didn't think you could. Also, it can force you to ride on terrain you might not often get to ride. But more than that, you'll get to ride places that are not public land. So no one really rides those trails you'll get to go. And one of my favourites is coming up is Pippinford Park. And I'm not sure what it is. I think it's like an old military base or something. And there's some weird stuff in that course. There's tanks. Not like water tanks, like tanks. Berms and hidden, like, it's weird. It's like an old battlefield or something. It's bizarre. I'll have to go and look what it is. But aside from that, I'd suggest trying to get over your anxiety about it if you've not wanted to race. Realise that it's a lot more relaxed than it looks, and everyone likes to talk big, and be surprised at how good you are. You know, a lot of people in the transfer, like in transition stages, they're talking big, like, yeah, I'm going to put in big minutes on this, I've been training and blah blah, and you're like, all right, man, and then they kind of go out like a leisurely pace, and you're like, oh man, I think I can do better than that, so you can get a little bit of an ego boost. Any questions about your first race, drop them in the comments, send me an email, I don't care, I'll answer them. Go and hassle Paul from Pedal Hounds, Scott from Southern Enduro if you're local. Support your support your local team and shop. In fact, it's a good excuse for you to walk into your local bike shop, say hi and say, do you know if there's any races locally? They might even take you along. Have a good one, guys. Unlikely for me because it's really, really horrible weather. It's like 30 mile an hour winds, freezing cold rain, and all I want to do is ride my new bike.